Picture this, a secret syndicate is operating right under the noses of city officials, quietly siphoning millions upon millions of dollars in unregulated real estate revenue. Welcome to today's Explainer. The story we're getting into right now, it starts in absolute rock-bottom financial desperation, and it ends with a multi-billion-dollar tech behemoth going head-to-head with the highest legal authorities in New York. You're going to want to stick around for this, because this isn't your standard dry business case study. It's a high-stakes financial thriller all about survival, capital, and the crazy unintended consequences of explosive growth.
$24 million. Now, you might be thinking that kind of cash was generated by some massive multinational corporation, right? Nope, not even close. This was the revenue generated over just a 4-year period by a secret group of, wait for it, 12 people. Just 12 individuals. They were quietly operating this massive, completely unregulated real estate empire right in the heart of New York City. They were basically booking out dozens, sometimes hundreds of individual apartment units, effectively running a shadow hotel syndicate. And the craziest part, they were doing it without any of the traditional overhead, zero zoning laws, and absolutely no hotel taxes.
So the obvious question you're probably asking yourself is, who on earth was running New York's secret hotel empire? And honestly, more importantly, what platform was secretly empowering them to pull this much cash out of the local housing market? Well, I'm actually going to let that suspense hang there for a second, because to really understand the sheer scale and, frankly, the massive irony of this real estate drama, we need to rewind. We have to go back to a completely clueless background story. A story about 3 broke guys who had absolutely zero idea about the market hurricane they were about to unleash on the world.
Chapter 1. The Breakfast Cereal Hustle.
Okay, let's dive into this, because we are cutting hard back to the year 2008. The economy is literally teetering on the brink of collapse, and there are these 3 guys living in San Francisco, and they are broke. I mean, completely, utterly desperate. They've got this idea for a startup, but they desperately need $25,000 in seed capital just to keep the lights on and stop their nameless little company from going completely under. One of the founders was literally sitting on $20,000 of credit card debt. They were maxed out. Traditional funding? Off the table. Venture capitalists weren't biting at all. Their backs were entirely against the wall, and it pushed them to some extreme, incredibly outside-the-box survival tactics just to make rent.
So, what do? Well, they turned to just unadulterated hustle. During the 2008 Democratic Convention in Denver, they orchestrated this wild, borderline genius arbitrage scheme. They went out and bought generic Cheerios in bulk, and then they designed their own limited edition political cereal boxes. Check this out. On one side, we have Obama O's. They managed to print 500 of these limited edition numbered boxes and sold them for $40 a pop. $40 for cereal. But they completely sold out, netting the exact $20,000 they needed to survive. On the flip side, though, they made Captain McCain's. And unfortunately for their cash flow, those didn't sell nearly as well.
To really grasp the sheer desperation of this moment, you just have to listen to founder Joe Gebbia. He said, the Captain McCain's, they didn't sell quite as well, and we ended up eating them to save money on food. Yeah, they were literally consuming their own failed promotional inventory just to avoid starvation while they built their tech platform. Talk about gritty, right? This was the true ramen profitable reality of their business in those early days.
Chapter 2. The VC Miss and the Reveal.
So while literally surviving off the profits and the physical flakes of their political cereal, the founders take their startup pitch to an elite venture capitalist named Fred Wilson over at Union Square Ventures. They walk right into his office, pitch the business, and they even leave a batch of Obama O's sitting in his conference room. Now, if you haven't guessed it yet, the company, of course, is Airbnb. And this brilliantly illustrates one of the most classic mistakes that investors make. The VCs at Union Square looked at the pitch, basically a marketplace for air mattresses on living room floors, and they just couldn't wrap their heads around it. They completely missed the bigger picture, the grand vision of creating the eBay of spaces. They just failed to see that an air mattress on a floor could systematically evolve into the next major hotel room. So they passed on the investment. Ouch.
Chapter 3. The Hockey Stick Growth. Fortunately for the founders, other investors out there, like Y Combinator and eventually Sequoia Capital, they actually did see the vision. And man, once that serious capital was injected, Airbnb experienced an explosive pivot. They moved away from just renting out airbeds and couches, and they started listing entire apartments and unique properties. The acceleration from there, it is absolutely breathtaking. Think about it. Founded in 2008 on serial money, by 2011 they secure $112 million in funding. By 2014, they pull in another $475 million. Fast forward to 2017, and they raise a staggering $1 billion round, and then, by 2020, they IPO as a company with $3.378 billion in revenue, operating across 190 countries. I mean, going from eating Captain McCain's to billions in global assets, it's just wild.
Chapter 4: Rise of the Commercial Hosts. Let's move to the next phase and see how this all builds right back to that suspenseful hook we started with. Because this massive, unprecedented global scale inadvertently created a completely new type of opportunist. The platform, which was originally meant for just sharing a spare room, was suddenly being optimized by these ruthless real estate moguls. Which brings us right back to New York City. The New York Attorney General at the time, Eric Schneiderman, launched a massive investigation into the platform. His office slapped Airbnb with a subpoena demanding data, and what they got back were the anonymized transactions of 16,000 New York City hosts spanning all the way from 2010 to May 2014. And guys, the data revealed a genuinely shocking reality.
Now, what's really interesting about this finding is the staggering reality uncovered by the Attorney General's office. 272. That is the number of unique units managed by just one single top-performing host in the city. Just let that sink in. This wasn't someone renting out a spare bedroom to pay for groceries. They were managing an entire empire. This single commercial host generated more than $6.8 million all by themselves. This right here, this was the secret, unregulated hotel empire we were talking about at the very beginning.
And this money was heavily concentrated. A massive $187 million was flowing directly into just a few neighborhoods, places like the Lower East Side, Chinatown, Chelsea, and the Village. Another $39 million was scooped up over in Brooklyn's Williamsburg and Greenpoint. These commercial hosts were essentially taking massive amounts of housing stock completely off the market for regular New Yorkers. They were converting everyday residential buildings into permanent, high-turnover tourist zones. Chapter 5: The New York Crackdown.
So naturally, the tension erupted into a full-blown legal drama. You had the city, intent on enforcing quality of life laws and trying to maintain some level of housing affordability, while Airbnb launched these aggressive public relations campaigns, literally plastering subway stations with ads defending their business model. The state attorney general laid out some severe arguments based on the data, basically alleging that these commercial hosts were aggressively gentrifying neighborhoods, creating outright illegal hotels, and disturbing the peace of residential buildings. But here's the most shocking part. The report claimed that as much as 72% of the site's private listings in the city, meaning listings where the host isn't actually present, were potentially illegal under New York law.
Furthermore, there was the core financial contention: $33 million. That is the staggering amount of hotel taxes the state alleged were being actively skirted by these potentially illegal listings. You see, for the regulators, this wasn't just a housing issue anymore. This was a massive, multi-million-dollar loss of municipal revenue. And governments definitely notice when that much tax money goes missing.
But, as you might expect, Airbnb had a very different perspective on the data. In response to the crackdown, an Airbnb spokesman came out and stated, "We should not deny thousands of New Yorkers the chance to share their homes, pay their bills, and stay in the city they love." Their main argument was that the sharing economy is actually a vital financial lifeline. In an incredibly expensive city like New York, the ability to rent out your apartment while you're away might be exactly what allows normal, everyday people to actually afford to survive there.
Chapter 6: The Unintended Real Estate Moguls.
As we look at the fascinating aftermath of this whole story, we see just an incredible contrast. So the crucial point is this. In 2008, the startup reality was Brian Chesky in $20,000 of debt, desperately selling 500 boxes of Obama O's just to avoid personal bankruptcy. Fast forward to 2014 and beyond, and the New York City reality was that the top 12 users on their platform were quietly making $24 million, with the state claiming $33 million in skirted taxes. It is the ultimate paradox of the tech world, isn't it? A desperate, scrappy survival hustle organically scaling into a multi-billion-dollar behemoth that literally forced major world cities to rewrite their housing and tax laws.
Which leaves us with a final, lingering question. Can the original community-driven spirit of the sharing economy actually survive its own multi-billion-dollar financial success? When a platform originally designed to let you rent an air mattress becomes the most lucrative tool for underground real estate moguls, where do we actually draw the line between innovation and exploitation? It's a huge question, and honestly, it's one that every major tech disruptor will eventually have to answer. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this deep dive gave you a powerful new perspective on the financial machinery behind the platforms we use every single day.